Northern China. You're standing in a village square. The sun is burning the back of your neck, dust coats your throat. A man you've never seen before tilts your chin toward the sunlight, runs his thumb across your jawline, opens your mouth and counts your teeth, the way a farmer checks a horse before buying it. Your hands are pulled forward. He examines your fingers, squeezes the tips, bends each one, turns your palms over and traces the lines, like he's reading a map of your future, a future he's about to purchase. He turns to your father, says a number. Your mother collapses behind you. Your father doesn't look at you. He just holds out his hand. Coins drop into his palm. And just like that, you don't belong to your family anymore. You don't understand what's happening. You don't know where you're going. All you know is that your mother is screaming your name, and your father is standing perfectly still, staring at the ground, refusing to meet your eyes. The man takes your hand, pulls you forward. You look back one last time. Your mother reaches for you. Someone holds her back. You will never see this village again. You will never hear your real name spoken out loud again. Because in the imperial courts of China, there was a system that lasted for over 2,000 years. A system so embedded in the culture that historians recorded it the same way they recorded tax policy. Routine, normal, ordinary. They were called nan chong, male favourites, young men purchased, trained, and kept as personal companions for emperors, nobles, and wealthy officials. And what happened to them inside the walls of Chinese palaces was so carefully hidden that the world forgot it ever existed. Until now. If this story grips you, drop a like and subscribe. It takes a second and helps us keep digging up the histories that empires tried to bury. The system began with hunger. The Han Dynasty ruled China for over 400 years. During that time, famines hit entire provinces every few years. The Yellow River flooded. Monsoons failed. Crops rotted in the fields. And when a family ran out of grain, out of livestock, out of everything they owned, they started making decisions no parent should ever have to make. Professional scouts travelled through the poorest regions of the empire. They had a name for these scouts, Renya. It translates to human teeth. Human teeth. That's what they called the men whose job it was to find young people worth buying. They searched for specific things: clear skin, bright eyes, delicate bone structure, a voice that could carry a melody. But it wasn't just about appearance. They wanted intelligence. They wanted someone who could learn fast, who could memorize poetry, who could hold a conversation with a man who ruled a province. Because the buyers weren't looking for servants, they were looking for companions, and companions needed to be impressive. The inspection process was humiliating. Young men were lined up and examined in front of their families. Hands were checked for artistic potential. Long fingers meant they could learn to play the guqin, a 7-stringed instrument considered essential in any educated household. Scouts studied bone structure, believing they could predict how someone would look in 5 years. Those who passed were taken immediately. Contracts were written in classical Chinese that most farming families couldn't read. A father would mark a document with his seal, or simply nod in agreement, signing away his son for 10 to 15 years of service. Most didn't understand the terms. The ones who did understood there was no other choice. But here's the part that no one talks about. Most of them never came home, not because the contracts kept them, but because by the time their terms ended, there was nothing left of the person they used to be. First thing they took was your name. You walked through the doors of a training house carrying everything you had: a pair of sandals, a wooden comb your mother gave you, and a name that connected you to a family, a village, a life. Within hours, all of it was gone. Each one received a new name, something ornamental, something designed to sound expensive. Precious jade, autumn moon, morning frost. These weren't terms of affection. They were labels, product names designed to make the merchandise more appealing to wealthy buyers. Your head was shaved. You were dressed in silk robes that marked you as property, not a person. And from that moment forward, every hour of your existence was controlled by someone else. But wait, it gets worse. The training program was sophisticated. And that's what made it so devastating. They weren't being prepared for simple household work. They were being shaped into the most refined companions money could buy. They memorized thousands of verses of classical Chinese poetry. They practiced calligraphy until their brushstrokes were flawless. They learned to play instruments, to dance, to sing. They studied medicine, accounting, even political philosophy, anything that might make them more valuable at auction. And all of this sounds almost civilized until you understand what was happening underneath the education. The real curriculum was psychological destruction. Any expression of homesickness was corrected through punishment. Any sign of independence was treated as a defect. Any memory of home, of family, of who you used to be, was systematically dismantled until you genuinely believed that your only purpose in the world was to please your future master. That was the goal, not obedience, belief. They needed people who didn't just comply. They needed people who had forgotten there was any other way to exist. According to records from the Tang Dynasty, which ruled from 618 to 907 AD, the cost of this process was staggering. Historical accounts suggest that roughly 4 out of every 10 young men purchased for training did not survive to become actual concubines. 4 out of 10. They were consumed by exhaustion, by malnutrition, by the sheer psychological weight of having their entire identity erased before they were old enough to understand what identity even meant. The ones who didn't make it were buried without markers. Their families were never contacted. They just disappeared, as if they had never been born. And here's what keeps me up about this part of the story. We're not talking about a war. We're not talking about a plague. We're talking about a business model that factored in a 40% loss rate and considered it acceptable. They knew. The trainers knew. The scouts knew. The families knew. And the system kept running for centuries because the math worked for everyone except the people being sold. This wasn't random cruelty. This was an industry. Scouts earned commissions, trainers charged fees, and human beings were priced according to a market that valued youth, beauty, and obedience above everything else, including their lives. For the survivors, the reward was a different kind of prison. Their quarters reflected their impossible position. Better than servants, less than wives, decorated rooms with silk curtains, jade ornaments, and fine furniture. Beautiful, comfortable, and locked from the outside. Think about that for a moment. Silk on the walls, iron on the doors. Daily life was an endless performance. They woke before dawn to spend hours preparing themselves. Cosmetics, clothing, hair, everything had to be perfect because you never knew when you'd be summoned. And showing up unprepared was the fastest way to fall from favour. And falling from favour in this world didn't mean getting reassigned. It meant being replaced, discarded, thrown out with nothing but the clothes on your back, and no skills, no connections, no family willing to acknowledge you existed. At 20 years old, your useful life was considered over. At 25, you were invisible. Competition between concubines in the same household was vicious. Masters deliberately set them against each other, rewarding the most entertaining, punishing whoever pleased the least. Trust was impossible. Friendship was dangerous. The person sleeping in the room next to yours would betray you in a heartbeat if it meant one more week in the master's good graces. Older concubines who had survived years in the system became ruthless themselves because they had learned the only rule that mattered: weakness gets you replaced. Food was another weapon. Favourites received delicacies. Those who had fallen out of favour survived on scraps. Your physical appearance was the only thing standing between you and catastrophe, and your master controlled whether you ate well enough to maintain it. And here's what the official histories leave out completely. Many turned to numbing agents to cope. Certain remedies were easily available in wealthy households, and they offered the only escape from the psychological torment of daily life in the system. The dependency made them even more trapped, even more controlled, which of course was the point. The toll was devastating. Though records routinely covered up the circumstances, Ming Dynasty accounts reference multiple cases of young men who simply could not endure any longer. These losses were reported as accidents to protect the household's reputation, because in this system, even your final act of defiance was something they could erase. Now, everything I've just described happened in private households across China, but inside the imperial palace, this system operated on an entirely different scale. According to historian Brett Hinch, who wrote what academics consider the definitive study on this subject, all 10 emperors during the first 2 centuries of the Han Dynasty had documented male favourites. All 10. This wasn't a scandal. It wasn't a secret. It was recorded in official government histories, like routine administrative business. But one story stands above all the others, and it's the story that changed the Chinese language itself. His name was Dong Xian. He entered the imperial court around 4 BC, the son of a minor official, roughly 17 years old. The Book of Han, one of China's most important historical texts, describes him as having a face like white jade and eyes that sparkled. Emperor Ai noticed him during a routine court ceremony, and from that moment, the emperor's obsession consumed the entire government. The gifts came first: estates, titles, treasure worth what would be millions today. Dongxian's father was made a marquess. His sister was brought into the imperial harem. An entire residence rivaling the imperial palace itself was constructed just for him. Then came the political appointments. Anyone who objected was crushed. The Prime Minister, Wang Jia, wrote a carefully worded letter warning the emperor that his generosity toward Dongxian was dangerous. He pointed to history. He reminded the emperor what had happened to Deng Tong, Emperor Wen's favourite from